Hello everyone, I'm Marvin, a progressive psychedelic trance artist, a professional sound designer, and I'm also a teacher for electronic music production. Today, like many of my videos, I would say that a company I love released a new plugin. It is Arturia, and the plugin is called EFX Fragments. It is a granular plugin, and it looks very promising. As a sound designer that spent a lot of time inside Pigments, and I would say I'm pretty versed with Pigments' granular algorithm, the question I have is this just the Pigments granular algorithm, but mounted into an FX setup? I think it's a fair question, but we'll see if it's the case. And at the end of the video, I will give you a couple of words of what I think of this plugin. Granular synthesis, I think, is here to stay. It's refreshing and creative, and I like it. That's why I'm interested into that plugin. And if that interests you too, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. And without further ado, let's look at EFX Fragments by Arturia. So we are inside EFX Fragments by Arturia, and I'm running the demo here because, I don't know if I'm going to buy it yet or anything, but I'm just trying it. And I want also to demonstrate what it does to you, because although it's the demo and I'm trying it, I'm pretty confident I've seized a lot of what that plugin does, and I can show you how you can use it. There's an advanced tab which is minimized for the moment because we're going to do an overview of the interface, but we're going to start with just the basic concept of that plugin. There's that buffer so far, and this is sourcing the incoming sound. So this is the EFX channel, and let's just play what EFX is listening to. And let's just play what EFX Fragments is currently listening to. It's pretty simple. It is the default patch of Diva. It's just a creamy saw wave. And as an example, we can just run it through that preset, which is called Ocean Sweep, and you can hear what it does. So it's a little bit more than just, the algorithm of Pigments. There's some differences. Also, I don't know if you recognize, but I hear the algorithm behind the pitch shift delay inside the grain shift here. Anyway, let's do an overview of what does what. But now you understand what the buffer does. So it's basically the incoming signal. If you hit more feedback, it's good. Basically beef up the feedback of the buffer. So it's gonna sort of, yeah. I think that is the best example. That was not intentional, but you see I drew in more feedback, and like any feedback on any delay or any plugin, it was, I was not hitting back any notes, and it started feedbacking on itself. So that was the best unintentional demo I could do for that feature. Also, yeah, well, the grain volumes here. If you're not familiar into what granular synthesis is basically there's a source sound, and right now it's the buffer, and the plugin or the algorithm is creating grains. So basically slices of the audio. Granular synthesis is one of my favorite synthesis so far. I think it's not necessarily the synthesis of the future, but it's really refreshing. It's going to help us, get out of these typical patterns that we have into electronic music into a brighter future, hopefully. So now that you understand that you have grains in there, everything else is grain related, okay? I'm going to lower the FX, and the intensity can stay there. FX is that you have a pan, you have a first effect that you can set up, but, it's the multi-filter. There's a lot of stuff that sort of reminds me like it's some of the Pigment stuff, but really put in a way that you can use in standalone mode. But I recognize, being well versed into Pigments, I recognize a lot of features from Pigments. So yeah, we'll see about that if I'm gonna buy it. But I think for someone who doesn't own Pigments, it's really great. But I'm getting ahead of myself right here. So you have these effects, right? So reverb. So that's why it's this Ocean Sweep preset. That's why it sounded so wide. It's because of that effect. And now if you play it without the effect, Well, it does sound wide, but you don't have the reverb. So that's cool, but I think I'm gonna keep the signal as clean as possible to demonstrate you what this does. So now, since we established that everything else is about the grains, there's the grain release feature here. You have the classic, which is very similar to what you have into Pigments. So you can go either by density, so it's going to be hertz. So this is going to be very short. And for demonstration, I think I'm going to turn the grain mix all the way up, so we're just going to hear the grains and not the buffer. I'm not going to go through every knobs in this video, but enough knobs so you can understand the logic behind it and how you can use it, or also if you just want to buy it or not. There's the size. So again, everything in this section is related to grain release. So, and at some point when you go deeper into granular synthesis, you can understand that that's where the art is coming to life. And it's all you organize the grains. What you do with the grains of in granular synthesis is really what it comes to, because that's what gives the nice effects or not. So grain size, you're gonna hear that the grain become sharper and just smaller. So hopefully you understand that right now you can kind of go from something like really almost plucky spikes to something that is almost like a sustained pad. So now with the pitch, it's set up on fifth, so it's doing some chords. There's other chords we could do, like minor. Let's see. Really cool. And if you stay with octaves, which is pretty standard. So it's really this part that gives the crystalline feeling of that preset. So now the grain capture part, since we talked about, again, everything being grains, we have the buffer. This is going to alter the sourcing of the grains. And in this plugin, it's the yellow line that represents the sourcing of the grains. So you can basically make it move, or you can just put it in a specific place, and you can adjust, there's some movement adjustment that you can do here. You can do some sort of just offset to work in offset. And there's also a manual scan, some manual positions. Basically, that's going to be useful. Let's say you're sourcing a percussion and you want to get a specific moment of that. And yeah, you can also freeze that buffer. So yeah, that's an example of how you would use the manual position. So I really wanted that, to hit that spike. So it amplified that feeling. So you can have a manual precision on that with that grain capture. So now let's open up the advanced tab. And there's nice visualization here. There's some grain quantization you can do. This helps. There's some presets that are really like almost like ambient and pad like, but there's also some presets that are almost gates, a very rhythmic patterns in there, and that is going to help with that. Now, so the grain release, we're still in the grain release thing. You can also have texture, so this is going to alter the way the grain are released. Again, let's try with this one. similar. So far, I prefer the possibilities that this one offer. And before talking about that line here, I'm gonna go into the rhythmic. But just to show you, like I said, there's some stuff that can become very rhythmic, almost gaity. So you have access, there's some sort of sequencing here. So you can kind of alter the in a sequenced way, you can alter how the grain are going to be released. So to have a gaty feeling, you know, you have the rate here. So it's basically the rate of the sequence. Also now it's time to talk about this, and you have the width, which is, you know, just a good old classic stereo width. Here you have the grain forward or backward. You can have it either way. But it's basically, it's the direction of the grain release. You can have some nice effect if you go backwards, and you can, you know, play with that. It's gonna add a bit of more, again, more randomness. But if sometimes when you're sequencing stuff, you kind of not looking for randomness. So again, yeah, you can play with that. Now the grain shape you have, again, very similar to Pigments. Adjusting the grain shape, it's going to, if you're going for something sequenced, some sort of grain shape like this, it's very cool sometimes. And if you're going for more sustained stuff, some like trapeze stuff like this, or yeah, I think this one works too. So you can adjust that. So if you're looking for a pad, it's going to blend better. And if you're looking for something that is more rhythmic, it's going to hit better. It's more plucky, or, you know, you can have some control on that. And finally, there you can add some randomness. And now for the modulation, you have three functions similar to Pigments. There's an envelope follow that it's going to create some sort of envelope with the incoming audio input. So we can assign that modulation, that the modulation that is creating, you can assign it to something. I think it could be really cool if we are working on a very percussive source, and I think now is the time to test it. I've tested on Diva. Now I have this djembe loop from Fractal Sounds. And you can see now there's some nice envelope follow. And if I add some fall, you're going to see like really like, you know, typical envelope. It's going to alter that. So for example, I could assign that to, I was going to say any parameter, but it's really not that any parameter. There's a couple of ones. Let's try to assign that on grain pitch. But yeah, there's a couple ones. Maybe we can do something nice with the dry. Can we? No? Can I? Okay, yeah, sorry. Just yeah, beginning with that. So you really need to get that assign mode for all the possibilities to pop. Okay, yeah, there's a lot of possibilities that you can do, and yeah, I would have been disappointed if it was not the case. So now let's see what it does with opening up and closing the dry and wet of the reverb. Let's see. Yeah, now we have some cool stuff going on with there's a bit of trippy effect with the size being quickly modulated by the envelope. Also, there's a sequencer that's going to help you modulate stuff in a very rhythmic manner. Let's try to do, let's try to unroute that. Is there a matrix though? Is there a matrix? How can I, okay, I want to remove that. Okay, double click. And now let's try to sequence stuff. Yeah, let's try to sequence that. Let's see how this sounds with the reverb gate opening and closing. And also, let's put the grain mix all the way. Yeah, really cool. There's some nice rhythmic stuff that you can do. So that is, if I'm comparing to Pigments, you don't have that really, that exact possibility to do. Although, yeah, it's just like, it's very well put. You could do some very similar stuff inside Pigments, but to give it a fair shot, it's very well put and very specific. So I mean, there's no like workaround that you have to do. It's very cool. And it's just focusing on the granular synthesis and to get the most out of it. So I'm pretty much done with my overview now. I'm gonna go, I have a couple of sources, okay, that I want to show you, and I'm gonna test it on these sources. You already heard the Diva synth, but I also have this Pigments presets. You know, I'm staying into the Arturia territory. This is a preset taken from Psytrance Fusion. It's 100 presets for psychedelic trance. It's available on Fractal Sounds. The link is in the description. And this is Crystal Phase. This is some sort of zap, and we're going to test EFX fragments on it. There's also that file here. It is some sort of throat chant, tribal stuff. It's a professional vocalist that did it, and I'm gonna use that. I'm working on a Shamanic pack for Pigments. So if you're interested, stay tuned, because it's going to be really awesome, and it's utilizing a lot of the granular synthesis power of Pigments. So I thought that since I considered this being a very good source for granular synthesis, we should try it into EFX fragments, and this is how it sounds. It's already processed in some ways, but it's meant to be sourced for granular synthesis. So let's do a no talking run through of all these sounds inside many presets of EFX fragments. And let's start with that throat chant right here. And that was EFX Fragments by Arturia. And that's it for this video. Now, the big question, is this just the granular synthesis algorithm of pigments but mounted into a buffer FX setup? The short answer is no. Now, to bring a bit of perspective, should you have this inside your toolbox? If you don't own Pigments, I think it's almost a no-brainer that you should at least consider this to be in your toolbox, because it's very well built and it has the Arturia mind flow of linking things, modulation. The interface is really well done. It's easy to understand and easy to use, and the presets are really cool. Now, if you own Pigments, the big question, well, another big question is how familiar are you with Pigments? If you're using only presets and you tweak, the macros and stuff, you're not going to be able to necessarily like reproduce inside Pigments what this plugin does. But if you're really good with Pigments, like I say, I think I can get like 85% the same thing inside Pigments. Now, all the sequencing parts, it's really new. And also, like I said, inside this plugin, everything is directed towards granular synthesis, while inside Pigments is just, it's just Pigments, and you really need to know what does what and what to link to get the similar results inside Pigments, which is the case for me. So that's why I'm not gonna buy it, because I consider I can do pretty much the same thing almost inside Pigments. But if you don't own Pigments, I recommend that you consider this. And even if you have Pigments and you just you tweaky some little presets here and there, and you don't consider that you know your way around, I think this is for you too. Yeah, I took more time on the conclusion of this video, but I really wanted to give you my perspective on this plugin, if you should get it or not. Hopefully it shed some light for you on what to do with this plugin and all that information. Aside from that, don't forget to check out the 100 presets Psytrance Fusion by Fractal Sounds. It is for Pigments, and it is utilizing the best of Pigments. The link is in the description. If you need some one-to-one mentoring, don't forget to check out my community of students. Again, the link is in the description. And don't forget to stay tuned on this channel for more awesome sound design tips, awesome tutorials, and some nice information. I will see you in the next video, and cheers.